And these three men are not stupid. They're brilliant individuals. Now, if they wanted to, they could look at what has happened in Japan. Japan has had an economic downturn. It started in 1992. Prior to it, Japan was boomtown. Japan was so wealthy that they were even buying American property. They bought Rockefeller Center. Maybe some of you remember that. If our leaders, if our brilliant leaders were really trying to help our country, they would look at what happened in Japan. All right? So what happened in Japan? Well, their boomtown was built on an inflationary bubble, and it burst, much the same as what has happened here. The government then took action, and the recession that they had beginning in 1992 persists today. All right, now, so I'm going to tell you what the government in Japan did, and I want you to just say to yourself, okay, check, that's what our government is doing. All right? So what did Japan's government do? Well, first of all, they cut the interest rates. What did our government do? Check. They had massive public works program. Has our government done that? Yeah, check. They had loans to businesses. Has our government done that? Check. They increased the money supply. Is our government doing that? Yeah, check. Bailouts for companies and banks, and some of those companies were nationalized. Our government done that? Yeah, check again. They had stimulus packages for the people. Dozens of them. Are we doing that? Yeah, we're doing exactly everything that Japan did starting in 1992, and they're still in the recession. Our leaders want us in this condition. They're not helping the situation. They're making it worse. They're setting us up for world currency, world government. Now, where did the idea for all of this come from? Well, a lot of it came from a book called the Communist Manifesto. I have a copy of it here. The Communist Manifesto is just the opposite of the American system. Our country started with the Declaration of Independence. And you can get the whole philosophical base of the Declaration of Independence and the United States of America in two very short phrases at the beginning of the Declaration. It says, men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And then it says, to secure these rights, governments are instituted. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's the philosophical base of our country, right there. Very, very brief, very short. There is a God. He gave us our rights. We form a government to protect those rights and nothing more. Okay? What's interesting is you can't teach that in the government schools today. The Constitution followed, and the Constitution limited government to securing the rights of the people and nothing more. Government should be negative, not positive. It shouldn't go around doing things for us. It should be protecting us from each other and especially protecting us from government. And so we had the Constitution. Then we put the Bill of Rights together. And the Bill of Rights says Congress can't do this, and can't do this, and can't do this, and can't do this, all the way up to that marvelous 10th Amendment that says if we forgot anything, you can't do that either. Right? 1848, Karl Marx and Engels came along with their Communist Manifesto. This is a Bible for all communists and all socialists. And they actually fight over who belongs to it. There is, of course, no mention of God and no desire to limit the power of government. But what it says is what is happening in our country. So what does it say? It says the theory of the communists may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of property. It goes on to talk about abolition of the family. It talks about we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social. In other words, they're opposed to home education. And we cancel the bourgeois claptrap about the correlation of parent and child. They don't want children raised by parents. Communists. They want to abolish bourgeois marriage, abolish countries and nationalities. They want to abolish all eternal truths, all religion, all morality, the most radical rupture with traditional ideas. And then they come through and they say the first step in the revolution is to win the battle of democracy. Our country is not a democracy. It never has been a democracy. It's a republic, the rule of law, not a democracy, the rule of majority. And you get over to page 25 in this Communist Manifesto and you read the 10 planks. All 10 of them are partially and fully in place in our country today, and it all happened in the 20th century. I'm not going to read them all. First one is about abolition of property in land. That's happening. Number 2 is a progressive income tax. We got it. Number 5, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. We got it. It's called the Federal Reserve. What's interesting is the communists said it should be in the hands of the state. Ours is in the hands of a private group. The Federal Reserve is a private entity. That's not well known. Right? We have outmarched Marx with the Federal Reserve. We get down to the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto, free education for all children in public schools. It should be government schools. And the government schools will never teach what will impact government power. That's very simple. It was during the Carter administration that a very important communist goal was achieved. It was a new federal intrusion into the field of education. It took on a rather darker meaning when one considers a 1932 book. In 1932, there was a book written called Toward Soviet America. It was written by the lifelong communist William Z. Foster, who was then the national chairman of the Communist Party in our country. And the book tells Americans, quote, just what is the Communist Party and its program. On page 316 of this book, Foster outlined what life would be like in Soviet America. And here's what he said. Among the elementary measures the American Soviet government will adopt to further the Cultural Revolution are the following. The schools, colleges, and universities will be coordinated and grouped under a national Department of Education and its state and local branches. The studies will be revolutionized, being cleansed of religion, patriotic, and other features of the bourgeois ideology. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was written in 1932. That has all taken place. They say the John Birch Society is a little bit extreme. No, all we're doing is quoting the communists. Foster went on to discuss how students would be taught internationalism and the general ethics of a new socialist society. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is being communized or socialized. It's the same. People say, what's the difference between a communist and a socialist? Simple. A communist is a socialist in a hurry. Very simple. Now, as each of us approaches fellow Americans about the need to get involved, even to join the John Birch Society, the most important hurdle to clear is to get him or her to realize something. And that something is very, very important. I want to stress this. The something that we have to get across is that we're not fighting ideas, we're fighting persons. Let me explain.